In the autumn of 1992, the quiet corridors of Austin Central Hospital echoed softly with footsteps and muffled voices as day staff made way for the night shift. Fluorescent lights buzzed gently overhead, casting sterile glows across polished linoleum floors. Carla tightened her navy cardigan against the chill of the sterile hallway air and exchanged an uneasy glance with Jen, whose hands fidgeted nervously with the badge clipped to her scrubs.
You seem a bit lost, dear.
I swear it gets colder here every night.
Perhaps I can help you find what you're looking for.
Jen murmured, shivering slightly. Carla forced a smile, hiding her own discomfort. Maybe it's just the ghosts, she teased lightly, but her laughter was strained, forced. Everyone knew hospitals held memories, not all of them peaceful. As they passed the nurses' station, they spotted Rachel, the senior nurse, carefully restocking syringes and saline bags. Her movements were precise, delicate, her thin frame and pale face softened by the gentle smile she always wore. "Busy night ahead, girls?" Rachel asked quietly, her voice soothing. "Hopefully not." Carla responded, grateful for Rachel's calming presence. Rachel had always been the stabilizing force on their floor, someone whose quiet reassurance was dependable amidst chaos. "Remember," Rachel said, turning slightly toward them, eyes lingering on Carla's hands as she rubbed them for warmth. "Keep your syringes labeled. You never know who might pick them up." An odd comment, Carla thought briefly, but she brushed it aside, nodding politely. Rachel had a way of saying strange things occasionally, just quirky enough to be memorable but harmless. Jen glanced at the clock above the nurses' station, 11:02 p.m. They had 8 hours ahead hours that would usually pass with routine patient checks and paperwork interspersed with coffee breaks in the fluorescent-lit staff lounge. Routine, predictable, safe. But as Carla and Jen walked toward their assigned ward, the familiar creak of a distant door echoed softly behind them. Carla glanced back sharply, her heart unexpectedly quickening. A fleeting shadow disappeared around a corner, leaving only the quiet hum of the fluorescent bulbs behind. She swallowed the rising unease and pushed forward. It was just a hospital after all, and tonight was just another night shift, ordinary, predictable. Except it wasn't. Somewhere unseen, a pair of eyes watched from the shadows, calm and calculating, patiently waiting for exactly the right moment. Louis Hart adjusted his stiff navy blue security cap and sighed heavily, leaning back into the cracked leather chair inside the cramped surveillance booth. Screens hummed quietly around him, their grainy black and white images capturing empty corridors, shadowy stairwells, and vacant waiting areas bathed in ghostly illumination. He rubbed tired eyes, blinking away the monotony of another uneventful night. At 57, Louis had seen decades pass by on these very screens, nights blending into one indistinct blur of mundane hospital silence. Tonight, though, something felt off. The monitor on the far right flickered sharply, momentarily distorting the image of the third-floor hallway. Louis frowned, tapping the screen gently. It cleared briefly, then blurred again, static crackling softly through the speaker. "Piece of junk," Louis muttered, reaching beneath the panel to jiggle the tangled wires. He paused, noticing something odd. The wires felt slightly warm, a gentle heat radiating unexpectedly. Pulling his hand back, Louis rubbed his fingertips together, unsettled. He glanced back at the monitor, now clear, showing only the vacant corridor, lined with pale blue doors and closed window blinds. Still, a vague unease settled at the back of his neck, prickling the hairs there. Then he saw it, just a brief flicker, barely noticeable. A subtle shadow drifted across the floor, indistinct but undeniably present. Louis squinted, leaning closer, breath quickening. Nothing. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to relax. Fatigue, that's all it was. Hours of staring at lifeless screens could make anyone see things. Hospitals were eerie enough without adding imagination to the mix. But as he sat back, eyes scanning lazily over empty hallways, Louis caught sight of a figure moving deliberately down a corridor toward the staff lounge. A white coat fluttered gently around familiar broad shoulders. "Dr. Ellis." Louis' stiffened hand hovering over the control panel. Ellis rarely worked overnight anymore, not after the complaints against him. The doctor's face was obscured, turned away from the cameras, but his posture spoke clearly of agitation, a tension evident even through grainy footage. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more, plunging the screen briefly into darkness. When the image cleared, Dr. Ellis was gone, leaving behind nothing but empty space and silence. Lewis swallowed dryly, fingers gripping the edge of his chair. In 30 years he'd never felt this kind of dread. But dread he knew wasn't evidence. So he returned to his chair, dismissing shadows and glitches alike, unaware he'd just missed the first true sign of a darkness hiding in plain sight. The staff lounge felt unusually cramped, oppressive beneath the buzzing fluorescent lights. Carla sat rigidly at the scratched formica table, stirring her lukewarm coffee, eyes fixed on the swirling liquid as Jen paced anxiously near the vending machines. "What's bothering you?" Carla asked softly, sensing Jen's restlessness. Jen hesitated, glanced toward the empty corridor outside, then shook her head. "It's silly, really," she murmured. "Just a feeling, like we're being watched." Carla suppressed a shudder, remembering the brief shadow she'd glimpsed earlier. "Night shifts," she reassured, forcing confidence into her voice. "Always plays tricks on our minds." The lounge door suddenly swung open, jolting them both. Dr. Ellis stood framed in the doorway, his tall figure casting a distorted shadow across the cracked tiles. His eyes met Carla's, a strange intensity flickering in their depths. "Carla," he said sharply, ignoring Jen completely. "A word." She exchanged an uncertain glance with Jen, whose eyes widened with alarm. Carla slowly rose, pulse quickening as she stepped reluctantly into the dimly lit hallway, leaving Jen frozen behind her. Dr. Ellis didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You've been talking again," he accused, his voice low and harsh. "I've heard whispers, more lies about harassment." Carla flinched, backing away instinctively, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I haven't said anything," she protested weakly, acutely aware of the empty corridor pressing in around her. He moved closer, eyes narrowing. "Do you understand what those accusations cost me?" His voice was barely above a whisper, yet the threat was unmistakable. She caught a faint scent of antiseptic and tobacco lingering on his breath. For a fleeting second, Carla's mind flashed with memories of his reprimands, warnings carefully tucked away by administration, hidden beneath polite smiles and reassurances. "I'm just here to work, doctor," she replied, voice trembling slightly. "I don't want trouble." For a moment, Ellis simply stared at her, breathing harshly. Then abruptly, his demeanor softened as though a switch had flipped. He stepped back, face returning to a calm, composed mask. "Of course," he murmured coolly, adjusting his lab coat. "Neither do I." Without another word, he turned and disappeared down the corridor, footsteps fading quickly into silence. Carla remained motionless, breath coming in shallow gasps, eyes fixed on the empty space where he'd stood. Jen emerged tentatively from the lounge, placing a gentle hand on Carla's shoulder. "Are you okay?" she whispered, eyes wide with concern. Carla nodded slowly, forcing a weak smile. But deep within her, an unsettling doubt lingered, a nagging uncertainty about the man who just confronted her. She couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Ellis wasn't finished, not yet. Yet neither woman noticed Rachel quietly refilling supplies down the hall, her eyes briefly glinting with hidden amusement at the scene she'd silently observed. Miguel Ramirez gripped the mop handle tighter, his knuckles whitening as he maneuvered down the dim corridor toward the abandoned wing. He paused to catch his breath, the smell of bleach and old mildew heavy in his nostrils. Miguel hated this part of his nightly routine, the forgotten corridors, shadowy hallways no longer used except for storage. Each creak beneath his feet echoed loudly, disturbing the heavy stillness. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight, the shadows seemed deeper, the silence thicker, as if the building itself was holding its breath. As he reached the far end of the corridor, Miguel hesitated. A faint noise drifted from the restricted storage area, a muffled scraping almost inaudible. His pulse quickened slightly, palms dampening as he approached the double doors sealed with faded yellow caution tape. He leaned forward, pressing his ear against the cold metal surface. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate pacing just beyond the threshold. Miguel drew back quickly, heartbeat hammering. Nobody was supposed to be down here, not anymore. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his walkie-talkie, then froze as the door creaked slowly open from within. Derek emerged cautiously, his dark eyes wide with surprise as they met Miguel's startled gaze. The young technician looked disheveled, his usually neat lab coat, rumpled hair tousled, a fine sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead. "Miguel," Derek stammered, clearly startled. What are you doing down here? Miguel's grip tightened on the mop handle. I clean. But you... Derek looked away briefly, gathering composure. Just needed to check something. Miguel glanced past him into the darkened room, glimpsing only shadows and half-seen shapes beneath plastic tarps. Isn't that place closed off? Derek hesitated, shifting uneasily. It is. I just thought never mind. He forced a shaky smile, eyes darting around nervously. Probably shouldn't be down here, right? Miguel nodded slowly, unease prickling at his spine. Derek had always seemed harmless, quiet, dedicated, but lately he'd grown withdrawn, distant, especially after Jen had politely declined his advances. Rejection, Miguel knew, could twist a man's heart into darkness. Come on, Miguel urged, gently gesturing toward the brighter hallway behind them. Better not stay here. Derek nodded, slipping quickly past Miguel, not meeting his eyes. Miguel watched him retreat. The technician's footsteps hurried, echoing away into silence. Alone again, Miguel cast a final wary glance at the storage room, pulling the heavy doors shut, heart still pounding. He paused, noticing something odd, a faint metallic scent lingering in the air, out of place beneath the acrid bleach smell. Coppery, bitter, unsettlingly familiar. He shook his head, dismissing it as imagination playing tricks on him, and hurried back to the safety of the main halls. Behind the sealed doors, silence settled heavily once more, broken only by the soft hum of the distant refrigeration units, patiently hiding their secrets in the dark. Anna sat at the nurse's station, her stiff-backed posture illuminated by the faint green glow of the computer monitor. Around her, the ward was quiet, punctuated only by distant footsteps and the hum of the ventilation system. Her gaze remained locked on the screen, yet her thoughts drifted far from patient records. A gentle laugh drifted down the hallway, Carla and Jen sharing whispered conversation, a friendship Anna had always watched from a careful distance, envy hidden beneath a practiced veneer of professionalism. She clenched her jaw tightly, fingers hovering above the keyboard, tension coiling in her chest. Carla and Jen's bond was unbreakable, built on quiet smiles, secret confidences, shared coffee breaks. A closeness Anna could never penetrate. Footsteps approached softly, drawing Anna sharply back to the present. Rachel stepped into the station, her quiet movements nearly soundless, eyes gentle as always. "Everything all right, Anna?" Rachel asked softly, placing a comforting hand on the older nurse's tense shoulder. Anna flinched involuntarily beneath Rachel's touch, quickly masking her discomfort with a brittle smile. Of course, she lied, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Just reviewing schedules. Rachel nodded slowly, her perceptive eyes studying Anna's face for an uncomfortable second longer than necessary. "I understand," Rachel whispered, a faint edge to her soothing tone. "Sometimes friendships here can feel exclusionary." Anna blinked sharply, her heart stuttering at the accuracy of Rachel's quiet insight. "You've noticed," Rachel leaned closer, voice dropping conspiratorially. "Carla and Jen mean no harm, but it doesn't make it easier, does it?" Anna swallowed, struggling to maintain her composure. "No, it doesn't." Rachel squeezed her shoulder gently, her delicate fingers lingering briefly. "I've always admired your strength, Anna. Loyalty deserves better rewards." Before Anna could respond, Rachel slipped silently away, footsteps fading into silence, leaving Anna's thoughts spinning in confused circles. Loyalty. Reward. Rachel's words echoed in her mind, strangely comforting yet unsettlingly cryptic. She glanced down the dim corridor, spotting Carla and Jen sharing a hushed conversation near the medication room. Anna's pulse quickened, bitterness mixing dangerously with longing. Rachel was right. Friendship had always been a closed door for her, one she was tired of knocking on. Anna took a deep breath, steadying herself, unaware Rachel stood quietly behind the corner, her lips curling ever so slightly into a satisfied smile. Rachel's eyes sparkled faintly with hidden pleasure, observing carefully as Anna's emotions unraveled. For Rachel understood better than anyone how hidden rivalries could quietly fester, becoming lethal beneath layers of practiced smiles and reassuring whispers. She knew, too, that such rivalries made perfect disguises for darker intentions. After all, the deadliest threats were always those hiding quietly in plain sight. The hallways of Austin Central seemed colder now, as though an unseen hand had turned down the thermostat, allowing shadows to creep boldly along the sterile walls. Rachel moved calmly through the dim corridors, her steps deliberate and silent. Her pale face bore its customary gentle expression, softened by empathy carefully practiced over countless shifts. She paused by the empty nurse's station, glancing briefly at Anna's abandoned coffee mug. The liquid inside had cooled, an untouched layer of film settling across its surface. Rachel lifted her eyes, looking toward the corridor where Anna had retreated moments ago, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "Poor Anna," she whispered quietly to herself, a faintly sympathetic note coloring her voice. "Always feeling left out." A rustle behind her interrupted the silence, and Rachel turned gracefully, expression placidly curious. Derek stood awkwardly in the hallway, his dark eyes shadowed with worry, hands anxiously gripping a medical clipboard. "Rachel," he stammered, voice barely audible. I didn't mean to overhear. Anna's upset." Rachel offered a gentle nod, stepping closer. "Friendships can be difficult, Derek. Not everyone copes well with rejection." He winced slightly, clearly wounded by her subtle implication. "You think I—" She touched his arm lightly, instantly, soothing his agitation. "Oh, Derek, not you specifically. I just mean these dynamics can become dangerous. I've seen it happen." He stared at her, uncertainty battling relief on his face. I'm worried, Rachel. Ever since Carla and Jen went missing tonight, everything feels wrong." She met his gaze, concern mirrored in her own eyes. "I know," she whispered soothingly, drawing him into the calm sanctuary of her confidence. "But we must stay focused. Suspicion thrives in chaos." Derek nodded hesitantly, relaxing beneath her steady gaze. "Thank you," he murmured gratefully, stepping back. "You're always here, Rachel, always helping." She smiled gently, eyes softly glittering with quiet intensity. "I just want us all to feel safe, Derek." He turned away, footsteps quickening toward the lab, leaving Rachel alone in the shadows once more. She watched his retreating form, her expression subtly shifting, the soft smile vanishing, replaced momentarily by cold calculation. She slipped a hand carefully into her lab coat pocket, fingertips brushing the cool glass of a small syringe labeled meticulously with her name, just as she'd instructed Carla earlier. A tiny oversight easily dismissed. She allowed herself the briefest of smiles, feeling a quiet thrill ripple through her. In hospitals, whispers traveled swiftly, rumors breeding suspicion, suspicion breeding chaos. And Rachel understood the delicate power in such chaos. She understood it better than anyone. As she walked away, steps silent against linoleum, Rachel left behind only darkness, quiet. Whispers echoing softly down empty halls, carefully planting the seeds of doubt, awaiting patiently their violent bloom. Detective Evelyn Harper leaned forward, her gaze intense beneath furrowed brows as she scrutinized the grainy security footage in the hospital's small administrative office. Beside her, Louis shifted uneasily, his aging security uniform crumpled, perspiration beading on his forehead despite the chilly air-conditioned room. "There," Evelyn said sharply, pausing the video and pointing to a faint shadow gliding past the corner of the third-floor corridor. "Who is that?" Louis squinted, his eyes tired but alert. "Can't say for sure. Could be Dr. Ellis. He was wandering around last night, acting odd." She nodded slowly, eyes narrowing as she resumed playback. Again the lights flickered, a brief static burst obscuring the screen. Her frustration mounted. Someone had carefully concealed their movements. This wasn't random malfunction, it was deliberate sabotage. "Someone tampered with this," Evelyn murmured, her voice tight. "Who would have access?" Louis hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously toward the detective. "Staff, mostly. Doctors, nurses, technicians." "Derek and Anna." He nodded, swallowing dryly. "Anna supervises the shifts. Derek manages some equipment maintenance. Both had opportunity. And motive." Evelyn pressed carefully. Louis hesitated again, glancing away. Derek was rejected romantically by Jen. Anna resented Carla's friendship with Jen. Then there's Ellis, he has a disciplinary history. Evelyn studied him carefully, sensing he wanted to say more. But Louis sighed deeply, voice dropping lower. "But Rachel, nurse. Rachel. She's been helpful. Steady, kept everyone calm, yet Evelyn sensed the hesitation prodding gently. Louis shook his head, slightly uncertain. Nothing specific. She's just always there, Quiet, helpful, watching everyone closely. Evelyn nodded slowly, filing away the small detail. Rachel, a quiet observer, perhaps too quiet, too helpful. But right now, Dr. Ellis stood in stark relief, the footage framing his shadowy form ominously. She replayed the tape once more, pulse quickening as Ellis appeared again, turning briefly toward the camera, his expression blurred, yet intense, almost haunted. "What's behind those doors?" she asked, indicating a set of double doors near Ellis's position. "The old morgue." Louis replied uneasily. "Been closed off for renovations. Storage, mostly forgotten equipment." Forgotten. Evelyn considered the word, a prickling unease rising at the back of her neck. In her experience, nothing was ever truly forgotten. Not secrets, not crimes, certainly not 2 missing nurses. "Let's check it out," she said abruptly, standing and moving swiftly toward the exit. Louis followed silently, eyes troubled yet obedient. Unseen by either of them, Rachel stood quietly just outside the office clipboard, held gently in her hands, head tilted slightly to catch every word. Her lips twitched faintly, suppressing a satisfied smile. The footage had been carefully doctored, shadows strategically placed, suspicion methodically directed. Everything was proceeding exactly as she intended. Miguel hesitated, keys jingling nervously in his hands as Detective Harper urged him forward toward the sealed doors of the abandoned morgue. The heavy double doors, marked by fading caution tape, loomed ominously before them, guardians of a forgotten space where darkness had thrived unchecked. "You said Derek was down here earlier?" Evelyn prompted gently, her sharp gaze probing Miguel's anxious expression. He nodded, swallowing dryly. "Yes." He seemed nervous, like he wasn't supposed to be here. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Louis, who lingered uneasily near the threshold, hand clutching his flashlight tightly. With a nod of encouragement, she motioned Miguel forward. He stepped reluctantly closer, inserting his key into the rusted lock, the mechanism groaning in protest as the doors creaked slowly open. Cold air rushed out to meet them, stale and sharp, laced with an unsettling metallic tang. Evelyn's pulse quickened as she raised her flashlight, illuminating the room's shadows. Dust-covered tarps draped forgotten equipment, metal shelves lined the walls, cluttered with discarded medical supplies. Evelyn moved cautiously, the beam of her flashlight slicing through darkness, catching briefly on something glinting from the far corner. "Miguel," she said softly, her voice echoing slightly. "Over here." Miguel approached, his breath visible in faint clouds. He tugged gently at the heavy tarp, revealing a rusted freezer long abandoned. Evelyn reached forward, heart racing, pulling the door handle with a grim determination. The freezer door opened stiffly, a rush of even colder air billowing outward, carrying the unmistakable sickening scent of decay. Inside, 2 figures lay curled, frozen in a horrific tableau. Evelyn recoiled slightly, her breath catching painfully as recognition struck her. Carla and Jen, their faces ghostly pale, beneath frost uniforms stained darkly. Time had stopped here, locking them in their final tragic moment. Miguel stumbled backward, a choked sound escaping his lips. Evelyn forced calm into her voice, even as her pulse thundered. "Miguel, call this in. Louis, secure the hallway. Now!" As they retreated quickly from the dreadful scene, Evelyn forced herself to inspect the surroundings more closely. Personal items lay scattered, Carla's ID badge. Jen's favorite pen items placed deliberately as if staging a narrative implicating multiple suspects. But something small caught her eye, a syringe partially hidden beneath Carla's frozen hand. She lifted it carefully, her pulse quickening further. "Property of Nurse Rachel." The label read small and precise. Evelyn's heart tightened suddenly, ice flooding her veins. Rachel, quiet, helpful Rachel. The syringe felt cold and damning in her grasp, a tiny fragment of evidence whispering dark truths. She stepped backward, gaze lingering one final painful moment on the frozen women, before sealing the freezer once more, shutting away their silent screams. Outside, Rachel watched carefully from the corridor, her soft face betraying nothing, eyes glittering faintly with silent triumph. Confident, her careful breadcrumbs would lead investigators precisely where she intended. Detective Evelyn Harper stood silently staring down at the syringe labeled neatly in Rachel's familiar handwriting. Her heart pulsed steadily in her throat, a cold realization settling deep within her chest. The quiet, composed nurse who'd offered gentle comfort amid chaos, could she really be hiding something so sinister? Yet it made a twisted sort of sense. Evelyn reasoned. Rachel had access means, and she was beginning to suspect a dark motive hiding beneath layers of gentle reassurance. She exhaled slowly, carefully sealing the syringe into an evidence bag, fingertips tingling. A voice interrupted her thoughts, quiet and steady from the hallway behind her. "Detective." Rachel stood in the corridor, her posture slightly hesitant, eyes wide with apparent concern. "Is everything all right?" Evelyn composed herself instantly, expression carefully neutral. "Routine checks," she replied, voice controlled. "We found something disturbing." Rachel approached slowly, concern etched softly on her features, eyes flickering briefly toward the freezer. "Carla and Jen," she whispered sorrowfully. "I feared the worst." Evelyn watched her carefully, scrutinizing every subtle shift in Rachel's expression. "We found personal items scattered, implicating several people. It seems deliberate." Rachel's brows furrowed slightly. "Deliberate? Someone's trying to mislead you?" Evelyn nodded, maintaining eye contact. "Precisely, but they missed something important." Rachel's eyes shifted imperceptibly, a brief flicker of unease dancing behind her carefully maintained calm. "They did." Evelyn paused deliberately, allowing the silence to stretch thinly between them. "A syringe yours, Rachel." Rachel's face paled slightly, though she recovered quickly. "Mine? Anyone could have used my equipment. You know how hectic it gets here." Evelyn studied her reaction instinctively, sensing deception masked beneath layers of practiced empathy. "True," she conceded softly. "But patterns emerge, Rachel, even in chaos." Rachel glanced away momentarily, eyes distant, voice softer now. "Chaos is dangerous. It makes people suspect everyone, even those who only want to help." "Exactly," Evelyn murmured carefully, noting Rachel's subtle tension, the faint quiver in her voice. "Suspicion feeds itself, but eventually truth finds cracks in carefully constructed lies." Rachel stiffened imperceptibly, forcing another gentle smile, eyes suddenly colder. "I hope you find the truth, Detective. Carla and Jen deserve justice." As Rachel turned and quietly retreated down the shadowed hallway, Evelyn felt the heavy weight of certainty settling in her chest. Rachel had carefully orchestrated every whisper, every shadow. Yet something didn't quite fit. Why risk exposure with something so obvious as a labeled syringe? Evelyn's heart quickened. Patterns, she realized, could deceive just as easily as chaos. But one thing remained clear beneath Rachel's soothing voice: lay secrets darker than Evelyn had ever imagined. And those secrets she knew would soon unravel, pulling everything and everyone into the unforgiving light. Evelyn sat alone in the dimly lit office, the hospital quiet around her, save for the distant hum of machines and occasional muffled voices in the hallway. Spread across her desk were scattered notes, photographs, personnel files, pieces of a puzzle that stubbornly refused to fit neatly together. Rachel's file lay open before her, detailing years of flawless reviews, commendations for calm in crisis, praise for her supportive presence among colleagues. On paper, Rachel was beyond reproach, yet Evelyn knew better than most that perfect facades often concealed disturbing truths. She rubbed her temples tiredly, the events of the night pressing heavily upon her. The syringe, labeled so neatly, the body's carefully hidden suspects, artfully framed. Rachel had manipulated suspicion, masterfully diverting attention toward others with effortless subtlety. Yet something nagged at Evelyn, a quiet detail hovering just beyond conscious awareness. She reached again for Rachel's file, flipping through pages carefully, eyes scanning meticulously for inconsistencies. Then it caught her eye, a small notation buried deep within performance evaluations. A brief comment: struggles with professional criticism. Highly sensitive regarding peer comparisons. Beneath Rachel's gentle exterior simmered quiet insecurity, hidden envy, feelings carefully suppressed, yet clearly present. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Rachel's motives crystallized sharply. Carla and Jen, beloved by colleagues, their competence consistently highlighted. Quiet resentment building over years, jealousy masked by Rachel's soothing presence, bitterness carefully hidden behind calm reassurance. The office door creaked softly open, jolting Evelyn abruptly from her thoughts. Rachel stood silhouetted in the doorway, expression calm, yet eyes strangely intense, quietly assessing. Detective Rachel murmured softly, stepping forward slowly. Still working, Evelyn forced composure, heart pounding beneath her practiced calm. Reviewing details. There's always something overlooked. Rachel nodded quietly, stepping closer, gaze drifting momentarily to her open personnel file. A faint flicker of something darker passed quickly through her eyes. "You're thorough," Rachel observed quietly. "But even thoroughness misses hidden truths." "Hidden truths?" Evelyn asked carefully, watching Rachel's face closely, pulse quickening. Rachel's lips tightened slightly, eyes briefly distant. "Everyone sees kindness as weakness," she whispered softly. "But it takes great strength to hold back envy, bitterness, especially when watching less deserving people succeed." Evelyn's breath caught, understanding fully Rachel's confession, quietly spoken yet chillingly clear. Success breeds envy. Rachel's gentle facade cracked slightly, eyes darkening visibly. "Envy demands justice, detective. Quiet people endure until endurance becomes impossible." Evelyn tensed instinctively, sensing sudden danger coiling quietly beneath Rachel's surface calm. She reached discreetly for her phone beneath the desk, pulse racing. "Justice," Evelyn echoed softly, deliberately. "Is that what Carla and Jen received?" Rachel stepped closer, still, her gaze hardening abruptly, voice dropping dangerously low. "They took what belonged to me. They left me invisible, overlooked." Evelyn's hand closed firmly around her phone, preparing silently for confrontation. Because now she understood exactly how dangerous quiet envy could become, and just how far Rachel had gone to escape the shadows of her own invisibility. Rachel's eyes narrowed, the careful gentleness fading from her expression, replaced by a cold calculation that sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. The quiet nurse who'd calmly comforted grieving coworkers now stood before her, unmasked and terrifyingly composed. "You don't understand, detective," Rachel whispered softly, her voice trembling with carefully controlled fury. "All those years of being overlooked, invisible, stepped over. I couldn't let it continue." Evelyn steadied her breathing, forcing her expression calm despite the icy fear pooling deep in her chest. "So, you removed them. Carla and Jen, why them specifically?" Rachel's eyes darkened further, her voice edging toward brittle. "They had everything: respect, friendship, admiration. They mocked me quietly, believing kindness meant weakness. Carla especially, always flaunting her competence. Always the perfect nurse. And Jen," Evelyn pressed carefully, watching Rachel closely. Rachel's lips twisted faintly, a bitterness surfacing openly now. "Jen was collateral. She saw too much, asked too many questions. Friendship can be dangerous, detective. Loyalty becomes blindness." Evelyn's grip tightened discreetly on her phone thumb, hovering above the emergency call button. "Yet you carefully framed Dr. Ellis, Derek, Anna, people who trusted you." Rachel's eyes flashed dangerously, composure slipping briefly. "They trusted me because I was convenient. Reliable Rachel, helpful Rachel, never questioning, always reassuring. Perfect camouflage for someone they barely noticed." Evelyn nodded slowly, pulse racing, the pieces finally fitting into place. Rachel had manipulated suspicion masterfully, her own resentment hidden carefully behind gentleness. "But you made a mistake, Rachel," the syringe labeled clearly. "Why risk exposure?" Rachel's expression faltered momentarily, her carefully controlled mask slipping just slightly. "A minor oversight," she admitted bitterly, voice tight. "But who suspects the quiet ones, detective?" "Even now, I doubt anyone truly believes it." Evelyn's thumb pressed discreetly against her phone, alerting nearby officers silently. "You underestimate others, Rachel. Quiet doesn't mean invisible, not forever." Rachel's gaze hardened abruptly, sudden understanding dawning dangerously in her eyes. "You're clever," she murmured coldly, stepping closer, hand slipping into her lab coat pocket, fingers curling around a small concealed object. "Too clever." Evelyn's heart thundered painfully in her chest, muscles tensing instinctively, preparing for the confrontation. Rachel moved swiftly, syringe gleaming faintly in her hand, a weapon of quiet vengeance turned suddenly desperate. But before Rachel could strike, the office door burst open, sharply uniformed officers rushing inward, shouts echoing in sudden chaos. Rachel froze, syringe slipping from trembling fingers, shattering softly against tile floors. As they restrained her gently but firmly, Rachel's mask crumbled completely, tears silently tracing paths down her pale cheeks. Her whispered words echoed softly, hauntingly across the room. "I only wanted them to see me." Evelyn exhaled slowly, heart still racing painfully. She'd uncovered the darkness, hiding beneath quiet kindness, unmasking an angel whose envy had turned deadly. Yet the chilling truth lingered stubbornly in Evelyn's thoughts. If Rachel, gentle Rachel, could harbor such lethal secrets, who else might quietly walk unnoticed, dangerous truths hidden carefully beneath friendly smiles?
Thank you for listening to Brody's Stories. Until we meet again.